Welcome to Surviving Stalking with your hosts Karen and Chelsea. This podcast is brought to you by Action Against Stalking, the only anti-stalking specific support charity in Scotland. The charity was created by a stalking survivor to encourage and empower others to speak out against stalking, seek support and change the narrative. Caution is advised as some themes may be sensitive to listeners. So today I have the pleasure of being joined by not just one but two iconic Scottish women. So first up, let me introduce you to a remarkable woman who truly needs no introduction, the amazing Dr. Anne Mould CBE. She founded Action Against Stalking after her own stalking experience. Anne has been a fierce advocate for making stalking a distinct crime in Scotland and has recently received an honorary doctorate and a CBE for her incredible work. If you want to dive deeper into Anne's story, you can check out episode 2 of this podcast. We're equally thrilled to have the talented Jane McCarry with us. She's an actor, comedian, teacher, and fellow honorary doctor whose work has made waves in Scottish theatre and television. Jane is perhaps best known for her unforgettable role as Isa in the beloved BBC comedy Still Game, and it's an honour to have you both with us on the podcast today. I just have to say, we're going to be having a more conversational tone for this podcast and vlog, so people can see us. So Jane will be asking us some questions. We'll ask Jane some questions and we'll just keep it really conversational. Also, when I was introducing you there, I felt a bit like Davina McCall. See when she's introducing people into the Big Brother house. She's like, fancy another one? But thank you so much, Jane and Anne, for coming on the podcast.
Oh, thank you, Karen. So can I ask the first question then to Anne? Do you have Dr. Anne on your passport?
No. Can you imagine someone taking unwell in a plane and they're wanting a doctor, they pinpoint me, and I'm going, I haven't got a clue what I'm doing. Don't ask me to resuscitate someone. Absolutely not.
No, nor me. Mark Cox and I got one for Queen Margaret University, and there was people that had done the most amazing things. I mean, the work that they'd put in, incredible charity. I mean, it was just wonderful. And we got one for dressing up and carrying on, and we thought that if we were on a plane, can you imagine somebody's having a heart attack, and we would have to say, well, we could tell you some stories about the crankies, but that's really it.
Well, that's what I was going to say, Jane, because I'm actually working towards my doctorate, which has taken me 5 years. So, you deserve it.
I think Anne deserves it much more than me.
Yeah, but Jane, we could do a spoof programme on it.
Yes. Called Doctors, but nothing like Doctors. It's on in the afternoon. Just
absolutely
us.
Doctors, but not doctors. Yes. Honorary doctors.
We could do a bit of a Fawlty Towers episode on it all.
Yes, absolutely. But no, you certainly have earned yours, and I know it's really interesting because when you asked me to come on the show, there's loads of things that that I don't know about stalking, that I don't, is there a certain personality type, a certain type of person that would be drawn to becoming a stalker? How does it work?
No one knows. There is no one standard profile of a stalker, Jane. Anyone can become a stalker given the right set of circumstances at the time, depending what these are. But also anyone can become a victim as well. So there's not even a standard profile of what a victim is. But stalking's not a unitary construct. See, there's different types of stalkers. But we use the word a stalker, but until we understand what kind of stalker are we talking about. So there's the rejected stalker, like the ex-partner stalker.
Mm-hmm.
So that's someone that's maybe the relationship split up. They want to maybe the stalking is part of maybe trying to reconciliate the relationship. And if it doesn't work, well, maybe that person becomes angry or to seek revenge because their partner has left. So we call them the rejected stalker. But we've got the other typologies like the intimacy seeker. And that's fueled usually by sort of delusion where they target someone for whatever reason, whoever that person is, usually an acquaintance or a stranger, and for whatever reason, they've decided they're going to be in a relationship with that person. You know, I've had victims where their stalker, intimacy seeker, thinks that they're going to marry them, and they've chosen the children's names, and they've bought the dress, or they've bought this, or they've bought that. So it's fueled, it's what drives the behaviour. So always remember, stalking is a goal, it's a behaviour, it's goal orientated. So for the ex-partner, the goal is to either reconcile the relationship or seek revenge for being dumped, basically, or for their partner ending the relationship. The intimacy seeker is to establish a relationship because they're in love with that person, whether it's really imagined or otherwise. For the incompetent suitor, that is more sexually driven, about having more sexual relationships. But the big one then we have the revengeful stalker for a perceived injustice, whatever that may be. But again, there's a delusional quality where that person believes that their target has done something that has been so horrific towards them, they are going to seek revenge one way or another, and they will destroy that person. They are so tenacious, these stalkers. But the one that scares me most, and for me, the true stalker or the true predator of the stalking world, is the sexual predatory stalker, because they will target acquaintance strangers. Now, some might like children, some might like young girls, some like young boys, others go after adults, strangers or acquaintances. We're looking at paedophile activity, we look at child abduction, we look at the gangs for sexual exploitation, we look at human trafficking. Mm-hmm. Even though there's a financial element in it as well. So stalkers come with different typologies, and they all have different reasons for stalking, but they all carry high risks. That's the problem.
I think as well, something that when I was talking there, sorry to cut in there, but the mention of other crimes as part of that, paedophilia, child sexual exploitation. And what people sometimes don't recognise is that stalking is linked to so many other different crimes, like assaults, sexual assaults, murders, and recognising that stalking behaviour early on can actually stop that escalation to these other crimes that we then see. So recognising the patterns, we call it four. So is the behaviour fixated? Is it obsessive? Is it unwanted? And is it repeated? Then it could be stalking, So I think we sometimes look at stalking as a silo, but when you look at all these other crimes that is connected to it, it is quite wide ranging.
And it seems to be, just in things that I've heard or read, it's the victim that's told to change their behaviour. Firstly, change your routines, move house. Don't. They're the ones that have got to change their behaviour, not the person that's actually doing it. And what advice? So if somebody was being stalked, is there advice that you would give them to say completely ignore everything? Don't open emails, don't open text, don't look at the WhatsApps, don't engage if you saw that person on the street, don't say to them to stop. And obviously it's very different if it's a stranger to an ex, but is there a general advice that somebody would be given if they were being stalked?
On you go, Karen.
No, I was just going to say there is general advice. I know that Anne would be able to go into a lot more detail on this, but in terms of, it's really important that if someone's stalking you, that you tell them no, that you do not want them to contact you. That is really important. And that you can say it just once, no, I don't want you to contact me, because if you're going to go and want to report it, that's really good evidence to say, well, I actually told that person that I didn't want them to contact me, because that's a big thing that stalkers will use. Well, I didn't know, I thought he or she wanted me to constantly communicate with them and phone them 2,000 times a day or whatever that might be. So saying it once is really important, to say, no, I don't want you to contact me. The big thing that we say at Action Against Stalking is talk about it. tell someone you trust, you know, whether that be a friend, whether it be a family member, whether it be actually reporting it to the police, but talk to someone you trust, because as Anne will be able to say, stalking leaves you very isolated, you know, it kind of breaks your world apart and you're in this tiny isolated world by yourself. And a lot of the time that's what a stalker wants. It's about that power and control. So don't allow that, you know, like talk to people that you trust about it. And the big thing that I would say is do not block your stalker. That is probably the biggest misconception that we hear at Action
Do
Against
not
Stalking.
block.
Do not block your stalker, because and that's a lot of advice that's given, and it's given with you know, the best intentions by a lot of people. But if you block your stalker, potentially you're then cutting off their way of communicating with you, and then it could escalate to physical, where they're outside your house. And sometimes, as Anne's said previously in other interviews as well, it's the unpredictability of stalkers sometimes. So when you block them, you then don't know what the next action's going to be. So a suggestion that we would always have is either get a different SIM, so that they're just texting a SIM that you're not seeing any of the information on, and you've got a new SIM that you're talking to your friends on, or give your phone to someone you trust again that can go through that, and you know, they can see the messages, which isn't nice for them either. But it's just that safeguarding and making sure that you're safe, you know, and you've got safety measures in place. But that's the big thing that we would probably say, that's and a big misconception about blocking your stalker. And I don't know if you've got any other ones.
Yeah, because I remember a case where this lady was being stalked, ex-partner, and it was all text and phone call, and social media. And she was so scared she blocked this person. That then triggered the stalker to go into the physical because he couldn't get a hold of her. So that was the trigger point for the behaviour to escalate into the physical world, where he started sitting round the corner from her house, following her, watching her, surveying her house. Now, it was much harder to get evidence. So anyway, and he would follow her in the car. But anyway, I remember he was actually eventually caught. It took a long while, because when she blocked him, she blocked a lot of good evidence. So what is stalking? Stalking is two or more behaviours. The majority of behaviours committed by a stalker are non-criminal within themselves. It's not an offence to send someone flowers. It's not an offence to walk past their house, or walk past their place of work, or phone someone, or text someone. These behaviours within themselves are not criminal offences, but placed within a stalking context hold a much more sinister meaning. So the working definition of stalking is two or more behaviours that are persistent and unwanted, that give rise to alarm, fear, or concern, constitutes the crime of stalking. So it's a two-part crime, Jane. There's the two or more behaviours, the course of conduct, and there's the impact on the victim. Okay.
And do the police only step in if it would be, you're saying like somebody keeps sending you flowers, again, that's fine, but not when it's all the time and you don't want that, and you've said, but they're saying, I love you, I'm sending flowers, I'm sending chocolates. They're not hanging about outside your house, but you feel very uncomfortable, and it's, can the police do something about that, or do they need evidence of violence?
No, it's not. It's very subjective. It's a subjective test. So it's the perception of fear. So if someone's sending flowers and chocolates, endearing gifts, without a doubt, but they're persistent and unwanted, and the victim starts to feel concerned about it, or worried or alarmed because it is unwanted and persistent, then the police might not do anything at that point, but this victim needs to keep photographs, keep hold of any evidence, document any evidence, keep a log of the incidents and present it to the police. Now, that doesn't mean the police are going to do anything at that point. But if the victim knows the stalker, then it would be helpful for the victim to respond to the stalker and say, I do not accept these gifts. I request you don't send me any more gifts or make any further contact. That's the line in the sand. That is the line in the sand. As soon as that stalker oversteps that line and continues, then the crime is being committed.
And with that oh, sorry, Anne.
Going back to that lady I spoke about, so the police told her to block her phone, block social media, everything. So when he went to court, there was this block of text messages and phone calls. She was then told to block her phone and block him. He transferred to the physical, couldn't get evidence, because if she'd to catch him in the car, she'd to not just capture the car, but the number plate, but him in the seat. That's very difficult to do. So that there was this gap, massive gap, where there was no evidence. And weakened the case completely. By blocking her stalker, she threw away all the evidence. So that's why hold on to all evidence, don't block them, because it will escalate a trigger, plus you lose a lot of valuable evidence. But when it comes to the flowers and the chocolates, it's the persistent unwanted nature, Jane, regardless of what the behaviours are.
And if you were to go, say, because a lot of the work that you have done to change things, and if you were to go to the police, you know this, Karen, as well, would you, and it might depend on where you live in the country, would you be given like a key worker, a person who you would keep in contact with? They would call you, you would call them. Would it be a general thing within the police, or would you have one person that would deal with that with you?
Well, in an ideal world, we'd like a vertical investigation, which doesn't happen because most of the time police officers on duty, it depends who's on duty at the time. And that can be very frustrating for the victim. Very, very frustrating. But what we always say to those listening, if anyone's being stalked, get in touch with Action Against Stalking, because we are that point of consistency where we can support the victim, advise, information, help them manage the fear, the threat. Now, if a case is not being investigated properly, say there's something falling through the net, too many police officers coming in, and there's not this transfer of information and communication to ensure the totality of everything has been recorded and the risks are being monitored, well, we can raise that at a higher level of police authority, just to say, look, this is not working here for this victim. There's a poor communication, too many officers. It's falling through the net a bit. We need to really ask you to go back and look at this again. And that's why engaging with, say, ourselves, a good support service, is crucial if you're being stalked.
Yeah, and we train Police Scotland as well, so in different ranks. We're part of that training, so they're getting trained on stalking specific behaviours. And as Anne said, that course of conduct is really important that it's captured. Otherwise, it looks like isolated incidents. And again, it kind of reflects back to what you said, Jane, about the victim seems like has to be the one that does a lot of the work here. Like they have to change, they're being asked to change things. But one thing we would always say, and Anne said it so much and so well so far, is the importance of keeping an incident log or evidence log is so important. So within that, it should be, you know, if an instance happened against you, you know, when was this? What time was it at? What was the date? Was there any witnesses present? Which is so important, again, if this goes further in the criminal justice process. You know, any other details, but more importantly, how did that make you feel? Because stalking is such it's a psychological crime, and it's very much victim defined in terms of how they felt as this was happening to them, and being able to showcase that fear and alarm is really important within that case. So we train Police Scotland around everything that I've just said there to make it really clear that it isn't just a one-off incident a lot of the time. If you actually look, it's a pattern and it's in the context of how it's happening. That it's not just that text message that day, it's actually been text messages for the last 2 years at the exact same time on that day, in building the picture round about that is what's really important.
And what about for the stalker? What are the chances, in terms, I suppose it's the odds, if that was happening to you, would you feel that it could ever stop? What can be done to help that? Is prison the best way? Is some sort of course for the person to go on, even if they were in prison? How much of the time does that actually help to retrain the way that they think? Is it helpful? Is it not helpful to do that in prison? Do they often come out of prison and it starts right away again? And I know there's every circumstances is different, but just in terms of, if you were in that situation, somebody was in jail, they were coming out of jail, what are the odds that it's just going to start all over again?
Well, when you're looking at the risk of stalking, there's different domains of risk, and it is about the reoccurrence, what happens. So even putting people in jail might give the victim a break for a short time to take the stress off them, but no one can guarantee that stalker's not going to start again. The truth is, we don't know. No one can tell whether there's a case of reoffending or what will happen if the stalker gets out of jail, what will happen if the stalker's put in bail. It's a dynamic crime on the moment, and no one can predict. I would say the most dangerous thing for any officer or anyone to do is to try and predict the next move of a stalker, because they might get it wrong, and that next move could be a tragic move. So no one knows. It's very difficult dealing with stalkers, but we do know that they very rarely stop on their own, and the police need to get involved to bring it to a halt sometimes. So I can't give you figures for the reoccurrence of stalking, to be quite honest, but I think that's an interesting one that maybe we'll take on board to try and find out what is the reoccurrence, the reoffending figures. So it depends on the typology of the stalker, to be honest.
And would do you think, Karen, because you're obviously studying again just now to do your doctorate, but if they went on a course, would that help? Is there stats to say that that's successful or not successful?
So yeah, it's a really interesting question, because for me, stalking is very behavioural and it's that obsessed behaviour that a lot of people have. In rehabilitation, such as, programs, to look at people's behaviour of why they offend, only actually work if the person themselves can admit the behaviour that they're part of, otherwise it's just a tick box exercise. So it's actually quite, people talk about rehabilitation quite flippantly, I think, sometimes, like, oh, rehabilitation. But if true rehabilitation was to take place where someone is really self-reflecting on, why have I done that to that person for so long? Why did I do that to my ex-partner? Why did I do that to my neighbour or a stranger? And they're trying to, self-reflect on why they've done something. That can be very challenging. I know it would be for me, just in everyday stuff that I do, but self-reflection can be very difficult. And I think there's no way to say if that would absolutely work or not, especially in Scotland. So I know in England and Wales they do have some perpetrator intervention programmes, but in Scotland, specific to stalking, that isn't something that we have yet. So we don't know how that would work. We do have it when it comes to domestic abuse in the Caledonian programme. However, we need to remember that stalking doesn't just happen in the context of domestic abuse. It can happen in neighbours, it can happen with strangers, it can happen cyber and online. So just really about, I don't know the answer to that in terms of what a course would look like or if it would be effective. But the only way any rehabilitation can be effective is if that person is willing to truly self-reflect and look at, well, why have I done this?
Yeah, you would need to identify the motivation. So if it's delusions, if there's a delusional quality, then you work with the delusions.
Mm-hmm.
If it's jealousy, then work with the jealousy. It depends what's driving the behaviour is where the intervention should be. So that would certainly need a qualified mental health professional, without a doubt. to work with those cognitive distortions. Let's put it that way. Maybe that's a good name for it, is cognitive distortions. But the trouble with stalkers is that it's not every stalker that's out to harm their victim. You see, there's two within the stalking legislation. There's two what we call mens rea. We call it within the stalking legislation, and it's for those stalkers who actually end up in a court of law and they say, "But I only sent flowers. I only sent a few letters." And look at the reaction of the victim. You know, the victim's falling to bits, the world's shattered, they maybe lost it. I've got someone just now who's about to lose their job with a stalker, I hasten to add. But, you know, but all I did was this. I haven't done that much to them. Within the law, that's not a defence. That is not a defence. Not knowing is not a defence, because every stalker would go in and use that script. There are also those stalkers who maliciously set out to cause harm to their victims, or they don't care, that they know they're causing harm and they don't care that they're causing harm, but they do it anyway. But the ones who don't realise they're causing harm, it's just by the fact of their behaviours are reckless that they cause harm anyway. So not knowing is not a defence within the law. It makes no difference. It's not why you did it, it's the fact you've done it. That's all we're interested in. It's not why someone raped a woman, it's just the fact that they raped
They did it.
And that's all that really matters. But there are those stalkers, like your intimacy seeker, they're not out to harm their victim. They love their victim. They're in love.
They want to be married and have babies.
They want to marry them, so they're not out to hurt them. They just want to get them into a relationship. The victim is not the primary victim, because they're the idolised perfect person. The victim's idolised. The person who becomes the victim is anyone that stands in the way of the stalker achieving what they want to do. Does that make sense?
It's really interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. So I had a case where this lady was stalking her doctor, psychiatrist. And she was going to marry him, and that was it. She'd chosen her wedding dress, she'd chosen the names of her children, everything. The only problem was he was married. So
the wife was the problem.
Let's get rid of the wife. So the wife was actually the one that was under threat.
That's like a film, isn't it? That is like you would see in a film. You know, it's the
like
classic.
Fatal Attraction.
Yeah, you need to get rid of the wife.
Or whatever. So, but because in your work, Jane, have you done any work with any episodes that have had a stalking element to it? Have you ever been involved in anything like that?
Not really, to be honest. And it's not a topic that's covered. Very rare. I've never seen anything in theatre where that's been covered. The only thing, of course, is Baby Reindeer, which you two can tell me how realistic that is. You know, I mean, it was great telly, but from an outsider's point of view, I don't know how, you know, that would strike you as being real, but it did seem to be very real. And what was interesting was the fact that we do often presume that it's a man to a woman, but it's not. It's a man to a man to a woman to a man, a woman to another woman. It can be anything. And I think that was an interesting take on it as well. And the fact that he did kind of let her in. So that gave her reason to think it was going to be something. And I think as well, probably in this day and age, in the past maybe 25 years, when you can look people up online, when you can go into their Facebook and see all these pictures of them and imagine you're part of that life, Instagram, Google them, you know, especially if you were in the public eye, but anybody really, then it's going to encourage. I know I worked with a young girl, and a lovely young girl, and she does a television show up here, and for the last maybe 2 years, she receives emails. Now, she was actually told don't stop the emails, and sometimes they're so romantic, wonderful, I'm so in love with you, and other times they're vile and full of hate, and she says, I never know what it's going to be. And you know, and she says, I don't read them, but I don't stop them coming.
Mm-hmm.
And then it started to progress into, I know what theatre you're working at, I know what time you leave, I know your journey home, I know. And then still nothing got done. But that was when she was down south. When she came back to Scotland, it then became, it turned into racist abuse. When that happened, then the police kicked in
Yeah.
because it was a yeah,
It
because
was a hate crime.
it was a
Yeah.
hate crime. So that changed it for her. But until that point,
Interesting.
she because it was just emails, and he'd just been Googling her because she's got a profile, nothing really happened.
And I suppose, which makes no difference, because stalking, it doesn't matter whether
Exactly.
it's online or whatever, and that's wrong because it's not acceptable behaviour. It's antisociable. It crosses that line. But interestingly, if a stalker only wanted to view someone or communicate with them via emails from afar, we wouldn't be just as worried about them. But
Hmm.
they don't. They
Hmm.
always escalate on to another step, whatever that other step is. And as soon as that transfers into the physical, then there's a problem on a bigger problem on the
Uh-huh.
hands. And and it's looking at what are the trigger points, what are the red flags, of the stalking, because every victim does need a risk assessment.
Hmm.
But I think my challenge, and it's why Cal and Karen did her, part of the reason for the theme of your PhD is the media representation of stalking, how it's being represented in the media. And that's very interesting because it's about changing discourse a bit, that it's not romantic, it's not. And I hear young people saying, "Oh, I've got a stalker," as if it's a big deal. I've got a stalker. I've got, and it's being used very lightly by an awful lot of young people, if that makes sense. So it's that media representation of stalking.
Yeah.
And I wonder what your thoughts on that are, Jane.
I think I thought it's difficult, isn't it? I mean, personally, from the things that I've watched and listened to, I can't think of anything more terrifying because there is nowhere to go.
Mm.
It's right there on your phone. So it's like, with bullying, you can't escape it. It's right there on your phone. Somebody might be outside your house, somebody might be coming to your workplace, following you. There is you would be terrified if you had a night light and your light came on in your garden. You think, are they in the
Yeah,
garden? Are they there? Are they You would never have peace and you would be exhausted. You wouldn't be able to sleep. When you can't sleep, when you're exhausted, that person might not come near you for 2 weeks, but you don't know that. You don't know if they're outside the window.
absolutely.
So I think I genuinely think that there's almost nothing that's more terrifying than that.
Yeah.
And feeling that they might go to prison, they might not, and if they do, when they come out, it's just going to start again. If you leave where you live and you cut ties with your life to move away, it's very hard in this day and age with social media to be completely invisible. Plus the fact that you've then cut yourself off from all your own support network and everything that's familiar to you. You're somewhere completely different.
Yeah.
It's it's almost impossible to solve if somebody is completely obsessed with you and they
Mm.
just won't stop. And very rarely are people in jail for that long. No matter what they do, no matter what terrible crimes they commit, a few years and they seem to be just back out again, serving maybe a third of their sentence. So
Mhm.
are stalkers always told when that person's coming out? Do they get a tag? Do you're saying, are people kind of laughing about, oh, I've got a stalker? Maybe if somebody sent a few bunches of flowers occasionally and kept turning up at a gig, but they didn't feel threatened at all, then you might lightly say, oh, I've got a stalker. But if you were in any way threatened by that person, there would be no humour, there would be nobody would be making light of that, I don't think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
No, I would
Abs-
agree with that actually.
I
I
was
would
actually I was actually in like the supermarket the other day, and as I was walking, there was two girls and they must have went to school with each other or something, and they kind of walked past the aisle and they looked at each other and went, "Are you stalking me?" And then they were all just the two of them were just laughing
mhm,
about it. And for me that is really triggering because like I always want to intervene and I'm like, "Excuse me, that's not what stalking means,"
uh-huh,
but to a lot of people that is the way that it's seen, because it's used
Oh.
so flippantly all the
Mm-hmm.
time, and then when we do that, we can then victims feel like what they're going through isn't that serious, they minimize it. And film and television are the same from what I've found, the way that it's portrayed is either really dramatic and over the top sensationalized, or it's romanticized, or worse than that, it's humorized. It's something that is laughed at, and then victims feel like, well, how can I speak about it? Because, the police will laugh at me, or my friends will laugh at me, or my family will laugh at me. Look, it happened in that film, and they got laughed at, and a lot of the time that's what we pull our references from. Our opinions, how we form them, is through the things that we watch. So it's really interesting in terms of the way that it's seen in film and television, in the wider media, I have to say.
And
Well,
what did you think of Baby Reindeer, Anne?
I didn't watch it. I'm going
You
to be
didn't
honest
watch it.
with
You
you.
didn't watch
It's
it.
too
Oh,
full of
controversial.
Yeah, I thought it was too controversial, to be quite honest. And given all the other stalking cases out there, there was something about it. I just didn't want to watch it, Jane. It's just far too controversial. Um, no, I can't give an opinion on that one because I wasn't comfortable with the whole thing. You watched it, Karen?
Yes, I had to. Well, I did want to, but also because I study this, I feel like it's important that I watch the things that people are giving me examples of. And Baby Reindeer came out 6 months after I finished my final analysis, so it's not actually included in participants talking to me about it, but a lot of them reached out to me and said, what did you think of Baby Reindeer? And that's a question we get asked quite a lot when we attend CrimeCon and stuff, because to me, that's a key modern reference now that people have to stalking as Baby Reindeer. And it's almost like that kind of baby reindeer effect. And showcasing how it escalates, I think was done quite well. And showcasing, that a lot of the time for victims, it's they just want to be left alone. They don't a lot of the time they just want their stalker to leave them. Like, I just don't want to be stalked. I don't want to see you. I don't want to be around you. Leave me alone. And sometimes people find that hard to fathom why they maybe don't want their stalker to go to jail, or they don't want them to be punished. But a lot of the time it's that self-preservation of, I just want them to leave me. Like, I just want to be left alone by this person. I didn't ask for this. So I think that's portrayed quite well in it, in the sense of he really doesn't want anything bad to happen to her, but it reaches the point where he has to talk to the police, he has to do things. And the most truthful thing I would say that I can relate to with working with victims, and working in this field, is right at the start in the first scene when he goes into the police station and holds up the text saying, I just had an egg. And the police officer's like, that's not stalking. Like, she's just telling you that she just had an egg. But he's trying to explain to him, but this is through the 10,000s of messages that she sent me. I'm just clicking on the first one. So, it's like that kind of way of, like, stalkers, as Anne was saying, they don't always send things that are hateful or massively romantic. Sometimes it's just, this is what I'm doing, because they feel like that person should really care about what they're doing, because they have this delusional belief almost. And that's actually the very first sentence in my PhD is, I just had an egg, and like explaining
Is it
exactly
right?
what that means. Yeah, because it's done so cleverly in that context, where we think that stalking is just, I hate you, I'm going to be at your door, I'm going to get you, and it's not always that. And again, it's not always violence. There does not have to be any type of physical violence for stalking to take place. And that's a myth. That's a misconception. It's a psychological crime, and it's, if a victim feels fear or alarm, it's not if a victim has been assaulted by someone that the crime of stalking takes place.
You'll hear many victims say, "Is in my head."
Yes.
It's in my head. It's intrapsychic. It's in my head. But there's another one. It's interesting because it can be symbolic or inferred threat. Because I remember this woman. Oh, she escaped from her abusive husband, stalker husband, because he'd been stalking her, but she disappeared, got a new house, got a new job. He didn't know where she was till one day she went out and there was a red jelly bean sitting in her car. And she was hysterical. She went to the police. And the police said, it's just a jelly bean. Well, it wasn't just a jelly bean. That was her favourite sweet. That was her favourite colour of jelly bean. It was her favourite sweet. And only the stalker would have known that. Her ex would have known that. So the message was, I've found you.
Yeah.
I know where you are now. So it's the message can be cryptically encoded. It can be symbolic. It can be delivered in so many ways, Jane, that it's not always direct. And it's how the victim interprets it. If you think about it, the messages are only for the victim to understand. They're not for the outside world to understand or anyone else. It's that intrapsychic, and it's the victim's perceived sense of what's happening. But if you ask a victim, what is it you're, if I to ask you the three things you're most scared of, number one, will he attack me? Number two, how long will it last for? Number three, if he gets caught, will it start again? But we've all got to look at the risk to a stalker. And a very good case is when a stalker starts to lose credibility. They become so obsessed with their victims. They invest a lot of time in stalking and working ways to stalk, and say they lose their job through it, or they start drinking alcohol, or they lose credibility. Say they're identified by the police and they're in the papers and everyone now knows. The more a stalker has got to lose, or the more a stalker has lost, the greater the risk to the victim. Because that stalker could say, it's all your fault. I lost my job. I lost my relationship. I lost this, all because of you. It's all your fault. Or if I'm going down, you're coming with me. If I'm coming down, I'm taking you with me. Now, that could be a death threat. It could be an implied threat. So there's so many different cryptically encoded ways that a stalker will deliver the message. But if you're looking at the longer the stalking continues for, the greater the impact on the victim. It's a drip, 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 drip. It's not the individual behaviours, it's the compounding number of behaviours. So the longer the stalking goes on for, the more behaviours, the greater the impact on the victim's mental health. So ideally, early intervention, get to the police, get it reported as soon as you can. Because even if the police can't catch the stalker, at least it's being reported.
Yeah, at least you've got a log, you've got a paper trail.
And what you want to catch is that stalker, or get intervention, because as soon as that stalker gets really ensconced in that stalking behaviour, the victim becomes ensconced as well. And the greater damage is done.
Oh, I mean, I can imagine you can't eat, you can't sleep, you've got no peace in your head.
Yes.
Your nerves are completely in tethers, you're jangly, panicky. How you can work would be very difficult because you're not concentrating on anything or look after children. And that's all the time, the time.
Absolutely. So how do you think we could raise more awareness then, Jane? Just looking at, we're just watching the time as well, because the Big Give campaign is certainly, we need to keep the charity running, but there's an increase in stalking. We've got more victims contacting the service than we've ever had before. Whether that's through an increase in stalking or an increase in awareness over people reporting crime.
I think both, actually. I do think social media has made a huge difference because you can look into people's lives and become fixated and obsessed in a way that it would have been more difficult to do before. And yeah, I think obviously because you've raised awareness and people now know where to go.
Yeah.
But what we would all love is everybody knew about this number who needed help. But then I've got a friend who does a mental health charity, and it's for people that are really suicidal. And because she's raised awareness so much, now it's almost impossible because it's so busy. It's impossible to deal with everybody and help everybody. So how do you do that then? If you raise awareness and lots of people phone. How did they all get help? That is an issue.
It's about increasing our capacity and our ability to support these people, because stalking is a dangerous crime, and it's about a timely and appropriate intervention when people are really going through the dark one. It could be the darkest place in their life at that time. So we need the funding. We need to employ more mental health professionals. So we rely, all charities rely on funding,
Of
and it's all
course.
about applications and trying to get that funding so that we can meet the demand. But what's important is that the demand is there. So we need the funding to meet that demand. Because to turn down a victim who's being stalked
It's how do
is
you do that? You can't do
it's
that.
like withdrawing a life belt from a drowning person. We can't. So it's crucial we get that funding. It's crucial we raise awareness. So it's just ideas, Jane. How do we really get that message out there to people? Look, stalking is serious. We are here to help. We need it to be given the credence it deserves. How do we get that message out there?
I would say, well, what we talked about before, we said about radio programs, things like that. You know, Women's Hour, BBC would be a good one to do. I think in the afternoon on Times Radio, they've got good listeners, and I quite often listen to that one. It's, oh, what's the name's Jane? Is it
Yeah.
Glover? Is it V Glover? And Jane, there's two
I
Jane.
watch the time with them. Yeah.
Yes, there. It's quite often I listen to them in the afternoon. Dreadful with names. I need to look that up. It's my age, but yeah, they're great and they have really good guests on. That would be another good thing to do. Young people now are on TikTok all the time. TikTok, Instagram, any of those things. So, getting the phone number out there and getting people who have got loads of followers to say, I mean, I don't have a huge amount of followers in these things, but I don't use it very much. But, to try to raise awareness in an original way. And it's difficult because it's such a serious topic to do it in a fun way, but at the same time, what attracts you? If I'm scrolling through TikTok and you're having your da 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 da, where do I stop? I stop if it's cats. Stop if it's dogs. I stop if it's people dancing. Do you know what I mean? Like what is always rubbish. But what makes you stop and watch that video? That's the key to getting your message across and getting that number out there. And because recently what I have seen in TikTok, which I think is brilliant, lots of videos where people have their face pushed into a cake or they're pushed into a pool. Now, it's not wee kids, hee hee hee, mummy, pushing them into the pool. The violence behind the person that's doing it, or when somebody's been pushed into a cake or at a wedding or they're humiliated, and I've always felt that's a horrible thing to do. I've never found that funny. I've always found that made me feel really uncomfortable. And when you see it, and that's getting called out all the time, red flag. If somebody's wanting to do that to you on your wedding day, your husband on your wedding day, or a wife to a man to humiliate them, to make them feel awful, or you need to question the why. And that at that point, please walk away. And they've had a really big impact. So things like that make you stop and think, well, what is stalking? What is that happening to me? If it's somebody like you say, oh yeah, he's kind of stalking me, but he just sends me flowers and chocolates, or she just sends me lots of messages on Instagram or whatever, saying that she really loves me. At what point do you feel uncomfortable? And it's yes, that is actually acceptable to go to the police, even though the person hasn't said, I'm going to harm you.
That's right.
So
Absolutely.
a campaign like that, I think, would be a great thing.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned pets and cats and stuff, because we do have a campaign that will start by the end of the year, and it's pet advocates. So it's about how people use their pets within this sort of like, you know, how they use their pets, and is your pet a pet advocate and all this kind of thing, to really bring in a different dynamic in what people want. But I think a big thing as well that you've both kind of said is around about, the funding and for this support, and as it grows, there'll be more resources needed. And I think that's why the Big Give campaign is so important, because if
Hmm.
people donate to us during that, I think it's between October 8th and 15th for the week, all funding will be match funded. So it means if somebody donates £50, it'll be match funded to £100.
Yeah.
And that can help fund our helpline. It can help, our practitioners. We have a CPT therapist, it could help her with a session. So really everything counts. And we are, as a charity, really reliant on funding through, applications, but we're also really reliant on donations from people, and why that is so important to, eradicate everything that was spoke about, make Scotland a safer place, make the UK a safer place, or the world a safer place if we want to go
Mm-hmm.
bigger for people. So I think that's why it's so important. And just on that note, I just want to say that the link to our Big Give campaign will be in the show notes for anyone that needs it and wishes to donate. It would be really appreciated to us. But also in the show notes will be Action Against Stalking's information if you've been affected by anything we've spoke about or want to learn more about what stalking is. We've just given Jane an hour's
No,
education
it's
there,
so
full
interesting.
education on
No,
stalking.
it's great because and also by the nature of it, there will be people with a huge profile. They might not want to be known right enough that this has happened to, but they will have huge followers and they would have an influence that, if we could kind of get to some of them, if they would be happy to say or happy to post on their
Yeah.
page, then that would be a great thing to do because there must be loads of men and women out there who've experienced this and have just never felt that they could say. I think it can be
Absolutely.
very private as well, that if it's is somebody in your life you don't want to say, you might not want your children to know, you might not want your parents to,
Mhm.
so that can be difficult and you don't want maybe people to be scared. Um, and often folk think they're handling it by themselves.
Yeah.
But if we could get that message out there and raise awareness, let everybody know about the campaign, let everybody know that it will be matched, which is wonderful. And who's matching that, Karen?
So the Big Give are matching it. We're in the Violence Against Women and Girls campaign sector on that one. So
Okay.
I'll leave the all the information to the website on the page for any or on the show notes for anyone that wants to donate to that. Big or small, donating a fiver and it gets to a tenner is huge for us as a really small charity in Scotland. But we have such a mighty punch, as our CEO Hayley says, in the sense of, we're the only dedicated stalking service in Scotland that's, devoted to stalking victims.
We are UK wide.
Yeah, so anybody can phone from anywhere in the
Yeah.
UK.
Yeah.
Yes,
Anywhere in the UK.
yes, I'll put
Absolutely.
all the details in the show notes so that anyone can go and refer to them at any point. And that consists of our free, all our services are free as well, that we should add, and they are confidential. As Jane pointed out, sometimes it can be difficult to disclose these things, but when you're working with a specialised charity and specialised workers, it's all completely confidential. And you'll have a listening ear, somebody that will be there. And sometimes that's the biggest thing, being listened to by someone and getting that advice. So I'll leave all that information in the show notes for anyone because we also have an email that people can email into, and we have a web referral form so people can refer themselves in, as well as professional agencies can refer any of their clients to us directly as well.
So if there's anybody out there that feels that they're struggling financially, but they would like to have cameras around their house, a light, anything like that, you know, who helps with that? Do the police help with that? Does your charity help with that? How would they get support?
So our charity can work with, we have the Victim Surcharge Fund in Scotland that can be applied to. So if you're working with one of our through care practitioners, that's something that you can discuss with them, and they'll be able to risk assess it as well in terms of, what might be needed, a ring doorbell to capture that evidence, locks on the doors, that kind of thing. So they would do full risk assessments, not in person. We do not offer in-person services. It's all over the phone or online, and that way it means that we can help more people because we're a very stretched team. So that's really important for us. Um, but there is different funds out there that practitioners can work with people to see what's best suited for their needs.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm just looking at the time and I'm thinking that I might have to leave.
Yes, sorry, we would talk all day. It's so interesting. Honestly, I've learned so much. It's so interesting. It's fascinating to speak to both of you. Thank you so much for letting me talk and ask loads of questions.
No,
people have to know I'm so nosy. I would speak to you forever and ever and ever. But
It's
fantastic.
We can do that over a coffee. How's that?
Yes, let's do that, Anne.
Let's catch up,
we can bum and see who's the best doctor.
Absolutely. We can compare our letters. Doctor Who.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jane.
Have a lovely night.
You too. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen.
Bye, Karen. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us. If you want to get notified of new episodes, please click that follow button and leave a review. You can also follow Action Against Stalking on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and TikTok. All links are below in the show notes. We want to thank our colleagues at the University of West of Scotland. Catch you on the next one.